Welcome to Artcasters episode 369. We are quickly approaching episode 400. By quickly, I mean 1 week at a time. We got Jason Brauncowski here from Drink the Paint Water, who we'll get to just in a moment. But before we do that, let's introduce ourselves. So you can find my stuff at coreykerr.com. I've got some new things. I've got this thing pulled up here, and this one I just finished. And so this has two of my more popular or famous things that I've said over the last few years that have unfortunately become more and more relevant as the AI uprising continues to gain force. It's like really popular to talk about now, but I've been talking about this for like 6 years. So I figured I'd make a better shirt about it. So go buy the shirt or the mug or the flag or the hoodie or whatever else I put it on. Yeah. And Josh, where can we find your stuff?
Well, let me have a sip from this mug. Speaking of mugs, I've been showing this off, but this is a Gary Hodges Dinosaurs versus Marsbots friend of the show mug.
Nice.
And I encourage you guys to get mugs with my art, Corey's art, everyone's art, because you never have enough mugs as a cartoonist, especially a cartoonist with allergies, because tea, when you have allergies, which I'm having from a Martian mug, is pretty amazing. Okay, that being said, Gary Hodges is like, that drink looks delicious. But yeah, you can check out my comics, Two Stories, which is a graphic novel trying to destigmatize hard conversations about mental illness, where it talks really openly about my journey learning how to deal with depression, a caregiver for somebody with panic disorder, and some heavier topics like that, in a very like slice of life, raw indie underground style. And then there's Jacob's Apartment, which is my slice of life graphic novel about two young roommates that are polar opposites that both through tumultuous times in their early 20s find themselves drawn together. And as they're drawn together, their dreams and reality start interweaving. And so it's kind of like if you take Eternal Sunshine for the Spotless Mind, put it in a blender with Ghost World, that's Jacob's Apartment. So check it out and support indie comics. And one last thing, just as a shout out to previous guests, because Scott has had Gold Key on a couple times on the show, and I think we've all been really excited about Scott's friend and his partners like rebooting Gold Key, which is awesome and exciting. And they just funded the Boris Karloff book, and so I just got the notification because I pre-ordered the hardcover because I'm like, I want this thing. So congrats to them, because that's really cool.
They did well too. They didn't just fund. They did.
They
did.
Yeah. They just released another stretch goal that they hit. Looks like they hit before they closed it out. And I can't share any of it, but I've got some information on what their next project is, and I will have a small part. It sounds like I'm going to have a small part in that Kickstarter. So
cool.
Sounds pretty cool. Yeah.
That sounds really cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. I honestly can't even tell you guys after the show. I'm sworn to secrecy, but I will let you know as soon as I can.
No, Scott, it's funny. The last time that we had them on, there was just a few comments you made where I was like, "Oh, I think I know what's going on here."
No, because I didn't know anything.
Oh,
then,
interesting.
So
Okay.
This was pretty recent, but
yeah. Well, exciting.
Yeah.
Teasing you guys.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? If you want to find out more. So I'm trying to get better at this YouTube stuff. If you want to find out more, stay tuned to the end of the episode. And also, if you guys are watching right now, before we introduce the rest of our guests, hit the like button. What are you doing? We got 9 people watching. Hit the like button. Leave a comment. Okay. Sorry.
I demand 50 likes or I'll take my shirt off.
That's a fair point. Do you guys want Corey to take his shirt off? Hit the like button. Save us.
Is there any way I can like it from inside?
Yeah, you can. Sure. Scott, without telling us secrets that you're sworn to not tell, where can we find your stuff?
You can find. So I have a YouTube channel. I am taking a break from YouTube, and meanwhile, I'm working on some cool stuff. So I'm anxious to get back, but there's still quite a bit of quite a few things to get done. But anyway, but I still have tons of stuff on YouTube, including my series Making
Every
Comics
of the
101. It is a basically soup to nuts deep dive into making a comic, everything you want to know from coming up with your ideas all the way to printing, publishing, and every step in between. So if you're interested in learning how to make comics, or I talk a lot about comics or making art, making a living from art, all that kind of stuff on my YouTube channel. So that is still up. Those videos aren't going away. So you can check that out while I'm kind of taking a break. Other than that, I have a website, circworks.com. You can go and you can find my comic, Young and the Dead. It's a kids versus zombie adventure story. I've got 5 issues right up there right now. I'm currently working on the 6th issue. Pretty excited about that, but so that's a ways away. Working on it every day though. But other than that, I've got prints and stuff and digital products for making comics, all kinds of stuff on my website, circworks.com. And the last thing I want to mention is Saturday, May 6th is Free Comic Book Day. And I will be, if you're local to Arizona, I will be at Surprise Comics, and I'll be signing and doing sketches and all that kind of stuff. So
I love it. And I feel like since it's called Surprise Comics, Scott, you need to, like, anytime you're doing an event, you should be like, surprise.
Yeah, I have to next week. I'll have to wear my surprise. I'm kind of representing 2 different comic companies. Comic stores. This is Arnold, who is one of the principals of the principals of Gold Key. This is his comic shop. But I don't feel bad because it's not. They're both very different shops. They kind of focus on different things. So,
yeah.
So I can kind of, I can kind of be bi-coastal.
Yeah, you're not going to reignite the notorious comic book store gang wars in Arizona.
Yeah,
these are bloody times, sad times.
Yeah,
we don't want to go back there.
So Scott and I recently went to Creative South, and we started out looking at a bunch of lunchbox in the Lunchbox Museum. And then the next thing that we did was we headed to the Drink and Draw. And lo and behold, there was this hairy man. And and we said, hey, let's go grab some lunch. And so, Jason, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks. You saw the gray in my beard and thought, all right, I can hang out with this guy.
Yes. Yeah. He's not on TikTok.
Yeah, I can't even floss. Not my teeth, not anything. I'm Jason Brauncowski. I'm a painter and illustrator. My artwork kind of wrestles with the whimsical side of horror and mythology. If I had to pin it down to an elevator speech, I run drinkthepaintwater.com, also a YouTube channel of the same name, Drink the Paint Water, and you can find me on all the socials at Brauncowski, my very hard to spell last name. Basically, for my YouTube, every 2 weeks I post a new art video of me kind of just experimenting with some stuff. I say that it's horror and mythology, but the last couple have been sort of personal projects. One was a velvet painting of Macho Man Randy Savage, which I wish it was here. I just put it in the mail the other day to the proud new owner. And the other one was like a scary castle, which was the cover for an adventure module. I used to do fantasy role-playing game illustrations, just kind of on the side for third-party publishers that nobody's probably ever heard of that's listening. But it was a good time. Tough to pay the bills with it, but a lot of fun.
That's awesome. I have a question already about velvet paintings, because when I used to live in Long Beach, there's a famous bar down there called the Alex's Bar, and they have like this wild collection of like velvet Elvis paintings, like in the place. And I've always had that part of me that's like, I've been at pawn shops or whatever and seen like a rad velvet painting and been like, I should pick that up, but then I worry it's going to start a habit. But I've always been curious, like, how do you paint on velvet, out of curiosity? Is it just like anything, or
it's really difficult?
Yeah. Was that a first, or like something you've done before?
I got interested in it. My first real job out of college. The art director brought in this beautiful matador, just a white matador and a blue bull. You can picture it on black velvet. And he had picked it up at a flea market because he liked the frame. And so he's like, this is right up your alley. And it was hanging in my office forever, just because it was so ridiculous. And it was a huge compliment. I'm not sure whatever became of that painting. I moved to Texas a little while after that, so I think maybe it went back to a flea market or something. But I've always just been, I don't know, kind of enraptured with it. And I thought, well, it can't be that hard. Let's do it. So I bought some velvet. And the hardest thing I noticed was that it's so much give. At least the elastic, it's so elastic. So the velvet that I was buying, maybe, who knows? Just the blind leading the blind. The F around and find out. That's kind of what I do on my channel. So I just tried to stretch it over a traditional frame, like you do a canvas.
Yeah.
And it was just so much give in the middle that I started stretching them over cradled pine. You get those art boards.
Yeah.
And so you've got that surface behind there. So I would just, like anything else, I would sand down the sides so the corners weren't sharp.
Yeah.
But just fold it over and staple it like you would a regular canvas. And that worked out pretty well. And then I thought, well, let's get even lazier. So I bought some self-adhesive, like peel-off sheets, like maybe that you would line a jewelry box with or something.
Yeah.
And slap that on the front. And to be honest, there's not much of a difference between that and like manually stretching it, aside from just, the craftsmanship of it, I guess. So the last two that I did were just that kind of applique.
Yeah.
And just because they were projects that I was just goofing around with, basically to have fun with it and create more content, right?
My favorite thing about what you've done recently is twofold. One, that you bought glow in the dark paint to do black velvet, and two, that you had literally sworn off of and stated that I will never buy glow in the dark paint. Like somehow you came to a point in your life where like this will never happen, and then it did. And so I just love everything about that whole story.
Thanks. It's true. I did an unboxing. I had gotten a golden acrylic sampler set for Christmas. And so I did a little unboxing video of that, and it included this tiniest little bottle of fluorescent paint. And I'm like, why? Why would anybody ever buy fluorescent paint? And then, what is it now? April. Here I am, like, okay, Amazon, give me some fluorescent paint because I gotta make the Macho Man. And we did. It came out great. But Josh, it's really challenging. The hardest part is that it soaks up the material. It's just so thirsty. And I don't know a way to prime it. So I just messed around.
That's awesome. I guess I'm like, I think Jason, you're touching on something that like a lot of designers and illustrators probably secretly always wanted to do by doing that. Because again, it's like there's like this love for like Corey was showing all those beautiful like lunch boxes from the Lunchbox Museum like last week, and we were just all kind of ogling over this like Instagram feed of like all these retro, lunch boxes, and some of it's because like they're kind of terrible, but they're kind of like they're amazing. And it's like there's I feel like that era of like kitsch or whatever, that like velvet paintings, and Randy Savage is great. Like that's a great choice for a velvet painting. That's amazing.
Yeah, he wears so much fluorescent, it worked out. And they were just kind of joke gifts for people, They weren't for clients. It wasn't. And that's very liberating. I think that's, to coin the term, the season that I'm in, is just doing whatever the heck I want, because I've got a great day job. I don't have to worry about making the client happy. Just get stupid with it.
Amen.
Yeah.
I love that.
That's why I wear t-shirts that literally ones of people wear. That's why I'm making those. I can count the number of people that have purchased a t-shirt on without taking my socks off. So you wanted to talk about don't focus on being a noun, focus on being a verb.
Yeah.
Why don't you kind of take us down like what you mean by that, and then we'll kind of jump off into that.
Sure. I was last weekend I was at CropCon in Austin. It's a creative conference. And on the flight down there, I was listening to the Creative Pep Talk podcast by Andy J. Pizza. I actually am a Patreon of his. I enjoy what he does. Some people might find him hard to listen to because he jumps around a lot. But I really enjoy it, probably because I jump around a lot too. And at the very end, he always gives you kind of an action item, an adventure item, right? A call to adventure, he calls it. And he just basically described, if you ask somebody what you want to be, like I want to be an airline pilot, or I want to be an astronaut, or I want to be an illustrator, those are nouns and they're static. So as a living, breathing artist, as a human that should evolve and experience other things, you want to strive to be a verb. Like, what verb moves you? And so if you think of that, like, okay, well, I want to be a doctor. Well, why do you want to be a doctor? Well, I want to nurture, I want to protect, I want to help. You know, those are all verbs. It's like active voice, passive voice, right? If you're writing something. So reflecting on that, my verb is entertain, which I think we covered in the last section there with that Black Velvet stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here to entertain, and I'm here to entertain myself, number one. And I think that is just a lucky spot for an artist. Like, if you can move yourself, your audience is gonna come and they're gonna vibe with that, and and it's just gonna work out. So that's my verb is entertain.
I'm a little worried what I think my verb might be. I want it to be something else, but I think deep down I want to be undefinable. Because literally every time in my life where I start to be known for something, I'm like, screw that, I'm out. Like a few years ago, I was doing a couple animated shorts that involved like insects, and so I was drawing a lot of insects. And then everybody was like, Corey's the insect guy, and I'm like, I'm never drawing another insect again. I don't know what that is, but it's not super helpful.
It's like if you tell your parents you like horses, and then every day or every birthday you get like a bunch of horse crap.
Right.
Yeah. I get it. Yeah. Well, what could be a verb then with that? I mean, an adjective would be enigmatic, right? But
yeah. I don't know. I mean, I kind of like what you're talking about, because I'm in a similar situation. I describe it as having like Project ADD, but it's really just I don't need to make money off of my art because my day job is covering all my bills, and so I'm just doing whatever I want. And so Josh and I joke that like Josh is willing to like buckle down for like 5 years, and he produces these amazing books. And I'm like, if a project starts to creep up on like 3 to 4 months, I'm like, I got to get out of this relationship. What is happening here? I'm feeling trapped and claustrophobic.
I feel like to be a graphic novelist, you're like, you have to be kind of the wife that's like, well, he bought me chocolate a couple times. It's like you forget the abuse, and then you deal with it for 5 years, and you're like, never again. And then it's like, but that book came out kind of cool. What's
the syndrome where you fall in love with your captors, Josh?
Yeah, that's totally it. Yeah. I think that's it. I think cartoonists have. Scott knows this. Oh, he's on the last issue of Young and the Dead, and it's held him hostage for how many years now, Scott?
But he's done a bunch of other stuff too.
Yeah, no. But I'm just saying it is the Stockholm syndrome thing. Yeah,
Stockholm syndrome. Yeah, I thought it was related to Patty Hearst, but
that's what we're all dealing with as cartoonists. And Corey, you have a bit of that with animation, where you're like, I'll just do an animation that'll take me like 5 months and it lasts a minute.
Yeah, no, I've got it with everything, or I'd be doing anything else. But yeah, but I just switch. Sorry, smacking the mic around. This mic will still love me though, because I treat it well, other than that smacking around.
You're like, here's some flowers, Mike.
Yeah, right. That mic, my microphone just took on a male persona, which got weird.
It's true. It has a mic name too.
but yeah, no, I really like the idea of so at the core of what I'm doing, I always want to encourage other people to create, just for the sake of creation. Like, I think that is like a basic core human element to like actualization and happiness. I think we are creative creatures by nature. Whether you look at that spiritually or whether you look at that biologically, I think it runs the whole gamut. And then the last probably 6 or 7 years, a lot of my work is focused on kind of the interplay between like individual liberties and how those individual liberties work within a society. Because if you swing too far to one side or the other, it becomes really problematic. Too far to one side and the individual has no rights, and it's all about authoritarianism, and too far to the other side and you just have anarchy, and there's a lot of problems with that. And so I found it just really fascinating to kind of push for those two things. And so I'm like making stuff, trying to encourage other people to make stuff to like help inspire them individually, but also like encourage them to work within a society. I don't know if there's a verb there, but I've kind of noticed that that's kind of like a thread or a through line in most of what I'm making. And also it kills conversation, apparently. So.
You're all just trying to think of the verb, I think.
Everybody goes, that was incredibly boring. I don't have anything to say that.
No, it's articulate as usual, Corey. You're very articulate. I think that it is hard. I think it's a good exercise to practice with like verbs in general. And I've thought about this. So like when Corey mentioned that was your topic, Jason, I was so excited because I'm like, I art direct too. And it's like when you're directing groups of people or leading people, there's kind of two ways you can approach problems. And one is kind of complaints and stuff like that. And a lot of it's very descriptive. So it's like, you will have like 9 times out of 10, it's very easy for anyone to kind of see something and see problems. But like verb type thinking is usually like solution oriented and action oriented. And so like it's one thing like, and you experience this a lot too, like when you're a cartoonist or an animator or an artist, where you'll meet these like artists, who are like describing this great thing that they're going to do and trash talking everything under the sun. And yet like you look at like their actions and it's like non-existent. So
they never make anything.
Yeah. Like some of the most critical people of my graphic novels have been people who are like aspiring cartoonists who've never finished a comic, and it's like that. Yeah. And again, it's like, I want them to finish. I want to see them do one better. Like in all honesty, I really do. So I think practicing just like action is so much. Like in my life, that's been way more helpful, where it's like, if I'm going to, like, for instance, I got really interested in like Risk. I'm going to bring it up. But the game of Risk, and because I got interested in it, I kind of want to try to become a grandmaster at it. It's stupid, but I'm going to try. I'm going to take action at it. I'm not just going to be like, well, I bet if I did this, I'd be a grand. I'm like, no, let's see if I can actually make that happen. I probably won't, but it's like taking action rather than the hypothetical, I think, is a big part of being an artist. But all that being said, because Corey was talking about rambling and here I am rambling. All that being said, I have so much trouble boiling down what I want to be my verb. I think the core of what I'm trying to do as an artist is create what I felt when I read like Catcher in the Rye. I want to create like a pull in people. That I don't know if that makes sense, but it's like I want to make people feel existence, and whether that's like the positive or the negative. Like I want to make them feel beauty and pain, like with my art, and so I guess like my main thing would be like communicating empathetically or whatever, but I also suffer like Corey with the thing of like we've joked about this, but all of our interests, like, and I think this might be just part of like Jason, for me, what you described too. I think some of this comes from just doing commercial art and having some success at it, where you finally get like a job where you're set, like your needs are met and stuff like that. Because younger artist me was like, you should get paid for everything you do. Everything you do should be like hustle, make money, like get paid to do your art. Don't do art for free. And now I'm like very much the polar opposite, where I'm like, man, I just want to do art for art's sake. I want to like Vincent Van Gogh my stuff and like go out and paint fields. Like,
well, I think if you have enough financial success with your art, you realize that well, that's kind of nice. It's also like shallow, like, it has,
there's something deeper,
it's like anything that you trade for money, you get an immediate reward. And then that goes to like paying the electrical bill and your mortgage. And you're like, well, that was it. But like, if you do it like for entertainment or, you know, or self-actualization or whatever, there's like a lasting impact to that. And I've kind of switched recently. I mean, a few years ago when I first started, because Jason, I don't know how much of my story you know, but I started drawing at 32. So this is the end of my 10-year experiment. So I gave myself a little experiment. I'm going to try this thing for 10 years. And if I like it, then I'll stick with it. And initially I was doing it as a way of like self-medicating. Like I was kind of white knuckling through life. And I'm like, if I'm not making stuff, like I don't feel right. And it was more of like you know, if you miss a day of taking your pills, you're just going to have a really rough day. And I've since kind of moved on to more of a moving towards something rather than running away from something. And I'm enjoying it a lot more. And it still has all the positive effects of, you know, keeping the anxiety and depression and self-actualization, dread of, you know, the screaming into the void at bay. But, but yeah, you know, I don't know. So I don't know, Scott, do you have a verb that you could tag?
Yeah, I think so. So, you know, I mentioned earlier in the show, and anyone that watches this show probably knows that I kind of stepped away from my YouTube channel, and that I'm working on something new when I return.
Hold on, Scott, real quick. Stay tuned, because who knows, maybe Scott will reveal where he's heading by the end of the video. And if you guys haven't, comment, hit like, all that stuff. Okay, sorry, Scott. It was just perfect time.
There is information out there. You might have to do some digging.
Yeah.
I did it. Yeah, on Patreon, but there's a public video out there on a podcast. I talked a little bit about what I'm going to do, but I'll be letting people know pretty soon. But
what people should do is sign up for your Patreon to go get that link to the public video. Yeah.
And they should definitely watch this video all the way to the end to see if that's revealed.
His third point was going to blow your mind.
You'll never believe what Scott's going to say next.
Scott's going to tell you 5 things that will change your life as an artist. Keep watching, you know, hit like and all of that. And at the end, we'll talk about those 5 things.
And we've put those 5 things in a listicle where you have to click next
27
times to get through the list. Sorry.
When your ad blocker.
Okay, Scott, we're gonna stop interrupting you now. I'm gonna mute Josh's mic.
I'm gonna mute mine.
Okay. So if you have been watching my channel for the past little bit, you know, it's basically me kind of putting, you know, turning on the camera and talking to the audience and kind of sharing basically my experience and the things that I've learned about being an artist and all that kind of stuff. And it's very much like a one-sided conversation. But I want when I come back, I want it to be a little more interactive, and I want to actually get back to making things, you know, on the channel. And that's a big part of it. So making, I think, is my verb. Even like I always kind of referred to myself, like if you look at my business card, it says Mad Creator, but now I'm thinking shifting more to like Mad Maker. And I'm thinking not only me, but the community, if it sticks, be Mad Makers. And because I do kind of want everyone to get involved. I want people, you know, it's going to be project based. I'm going to be working on these cool projects and everything. And, you know, whether it's just interesting to watch or you can participate. But so that's kind of what I'm kind of shifting to, you know, like I said before, is just kind of me sharing, you know, now it's going to be me making, I guess. So I guess making would be the verb.
Nice.
So,
A great verb.
yeah, that's kind of the direction I'm going.
So Jason, with kind of entertaining yourself and others, I'm sure you're like most creatives where there's a lot more that you'd like to do than you actually have time to do. Does that help you, you know, kind of triage tasks or choose projects that you want to work on at the exclusion of other projects, or how does knowing that kind of affect what you're doing?
Well, it has a little bit to do with why I got out of the fantasy illustration. because a lot of that is just distilling somebody else's vision into
Right.
this little tiny quarter-page square for almost no money. Right? And it's, I've found myself, and you don't just get one at a time. You know, you get 8 or 10 at a time, and I found myself just beaten down over that, especially when I don't need that money. So I think this is just, I took some time off from it, and then the pandemic hit. So I didn't have any work or any appearances or anything after that for a couple of years. So it was a nice needed break. But now I'm just doing it for the kicks, just doing it for the vine, as they say. I don't think vine's a thing anymore. But. Did that answer your question, or was it meandering?
Yeah, no, I think it does. I guess do you use like use like a level of entertainment as any kind of a metric? I don't know. I'm like a really like annoyingly introspective person, and so I'm constantly analyzing like why I do stuff. So I'm curious if there's like 3 things that you want to do, how do you choose which one you're going to do today? And does that kind of relate to kind of this idea of entertaining yourself, or is there a component of, oh, maybe this would help my YouTube channel, or maybe this would help my, maybe I could sell it, or something. Is it a mixture of those things, or is it all just like whatever you think the most fun thing is going to be at the time? Does that drive everything?
I think a good way to manage your time, I learned this in some professional coaching with Coach Scotty Russell last fall. I was in his 12-week intensive. There's a plug for you, Scotty. That if it's not a hell yes, it should be a hell no. You've got a finite amount of time, especially people that have other jobs and families and responsibilities and things.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I triage it. And the last couple that I got were just fun, stupid ideas. But it also then goes to, all right, I'm trying to keep up this 2-week cadence of making art and doing all the video and editing, and I'm the one-man team. So what can I accomplish in that 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Although I could break it down to smaller things, but right now I'm not at a loss for ideas of stuff that just excites me and I think would be entertaining for people to watch or enjoyable for me to do. Is I guess the main thing, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's awesome.
Yeah, because I kind of look at stuff, and it depends how my bank account is doing and how I kind of triage what I'm working on. But I mean, I do like, I'm not I'm currently, for the last I don't know, what is it, April or May, probably for the last 4 or 5 months, I've been specifically trying to make like a series of things that'll end up in kind of like a book. There'll be cards that I'll sell, and in the meantime I'm putting them on products. There's a bit of a challenge that I enjoy of like trying to see if I can do that type of thing, because with me, I hate doing fan art. Like I have to really like something to kind of not do something, or to do something where I don't own the intellectual property. And I've done fan art, or whatever. And it pisses me off to no end that stuff sells 10 times as more as the stuff where I like, put like blood, sweat, and tears into it. And it's got a deep seated meaning to me and things like that. And so lately, part of what's been fun is like, can I get some of these ideas out there in a way that also resonate with other people in a way that kind of gets purchased, which is interesting for me, because I try not to validate my art with money, but it is kind of nice to see like that there's a person that has connected with it, rather than like, oh I made $10 or or whatever. So there's some of that. That's kind of fun.
Do you do any in-person shows at all ever? Any even farmers markets or shows?
I did Salt Lake Comic-Con, which is now FanX, one time, kind of right before the pandemic hit. And that was the wrong show for my type of stuff. Like I made a few $100, over my cost, but I haven't yet. Part of it is really dislike inventory. And so, like shirts are like the worst thing to do because there's so many different sizes and colors and you never can really guess, whatever. So all of my shirts are print on demand so that I don't have inventory. And then the rest of it is going to be like stickers and postcards and patches and stuff like that. And so I mean, actually after watching Jimmy from Atomic Child, I kind of thought, maybe I should, because I live in a really remote area where there's just not a lot of people. And so I'm always like, there's no conventions. Like the nearest convention is a couple 100 miles away. But like there's farmers markets and there's probably flea markets somewhere that I could, so I don't know. I've been toying with that, but I haven't really pulled the trigger on anything super local yet.
I kind of had him in the back of my mind when I asked that question, I think, just from his, and that's just a good way to get that immediate, cash in immediately on that connection.
Right.
You see someone appreciate your work. My favorite memory of working like a gaming convention was this little girl. She had to be 8 years old, and I had Ouroboros, the snake eating its own tail.
Oh, okay.
Mine was kind of I might have slaughtered how that's pronounced, but you know what I'm saying, like the snake eating its own tail.
Yeah.
But mine was kind of a figure 8, and it was kind of more of a dragon head, but same basic thing. And it was just a little 4x6 inch watercolor painting that I had done for an Inktober probably. And this little 8-year-old girl walked up and saw it, and she just died laughing. Like it was the best thing she'd ever seen in her life, and her dad had to buy it for her. So that was just really cool to get that just immediate, just good feeling back from that immediate feedback. So if that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, it's not like a big panel of like corporate executives like looking over something and being like, let's see. It's just like a kid's sheer joy at seeing, like, just being like, I love this. I love that. Like that is actually pretty magical. Yeah. I need to make some more all ages stuff.
I did have at that show that I did. There were a couple. They were probably like somewhere. I am really bad at guessing ages, but younger teenagers, somewhere between like 13 and 15.
Yeah.
And I had this pitch down that was probably more self-deprecating than it should have been, and they were like, no, dude, I get it. Like I love all of this stuff. Like I'm totally into it. You don't need to sell me on it. Like I'm just trying to decide which ones I want. And so I realized like I needed to shut up and let them just kind of like, and it was cool. They were like super into it. And so you get a couple of those. Some of them are like, so do you have any like Wonder Woman stuff that you've drawn or whatever? And I'm like, yeah, you're at the wrong table, man. But like every once in a while I would get somebody who's like, oh yeah, like I'm super into this. Yeah, that is really cool. I'm glad you brought that up because it's like, there is something that I'm missing because like there's like a local zine that like reached out and there's a couple local stores that carry some of my stickers and stuff, but I'm not there. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like every once in a while, like one time I was in Vegas and I bumped into somebody who was wearing one of my shirts who didn't know who I was. And I was that weird guy that was like, dude, I made that, like
I have totally experienced that, like with Threadless. Like there were some shirts that like sold really well, but I never really experienced the reality of it. The only times I would experience it is if I'm at like a bookstore and I'm like, somebody's wearing League of Cliche Evil Villains, and I'm like, that's what. And it's hilarious because you'd think like you'd be embarrassed or whatever, but it's like I would want to go up to the person and be like, "That's that's amazing."
Do you tell them? Did you tell them?
I did it a couple times, but there were a couple that like most of the time it was this really rare experience, but there were a couple that kind of took off, and then I realized it was kind of an uncomfortable thing to do to people. But it was one of those weird things where like it never gets old. Like even now, even for my job commercially, it's like when I see stuff in stores that I drew, and especially if I'm like just sitting back in the corner kind of watching somebody like actually pick it up and look at it and be into it, it's like that's really cool. Like that doesn't get old. It's like, getting an email from somebody who read your book, which is like, when does that happen? But when it does, it's like, I don't know if those actually that might be a good thing for people listening. It's like you guys out there who are creators may not know how impactful just reaching out to somebody that you read a comic of or bought a shirt of or something and just say like, hey, killer design. Like I really enjoyed this t-shirt. This is my favorite t-shirt or whatever.
Right.
Cause we actually are all kind of in our little silos. And I think not having that one-on-one interaction, you can forget like why, like Jason was saying, like you can forget that you're trying to entertain. Like sometimes, but having that
like Ryan Lee and Jason Copeland that we just had on the show.
Yeah.
Both much bigger names than any of the people kind of in the circles that I run in.
Yeah.
Like Ryan Lee, like he's drawn Ninja Turtles, he's drawn Rick and Morty, like he does all of that stuff. And literally the only reason we know each other is because this is a weird thing to say to someone, but like if you're an artist, like you get it. Like he drew this like knob on the dashboard of an old vintage car, and the way that he inked it was so freaking rad. Like it wasn't even like a focus, like it was just like kind of like in the shot. And I totally emailed him and I was like, dude, that knob is like rad. Anyway,
like nice knob.
Nice knob, man. And it was cool because then he's been on the show and we've kind of,
that is awesome.
Kind of been back and forth. And just very similar with like Jason Copeland. I was just talking to him about like the way he inks is just fun. And so anyway, there's a ton of that. So
reaching out and saying those things really, I mean, you'd be surprised because like when I posted that last video, I mean, the amount of comments and stuff I got, it's like, where was this community before? I mean, and people would comment here and there, but it really was humbling to hear everyone, say how much I helped them and everything like that. And, and for whatever reason, prior to that, people didn't let me know as much, so it's like, yeah.
And I'll back that up because you released that video. Did it come out during Creative South or right before Creative South?
Right before Creative South, yeah.
Yeah. Because it was interesting because I watched the video.
Yeah, because I was there responding to all the comments when we were.
Yeah, and we were hanging out, and it was just really fun to see Scott getting, 8 years of making a video every week. And then there's finally like hundreds of people that came out and were like, dude, you changed my life in this way. And this was really impactful. And I started doing comics because of you. And like all of this stuff, it was fun to watch, like as a good friend of Scott's, it was fun to watch Scott have that experience. And so, it's a good thing.
I like what Jim said here too. He said, I always feel if you have the thought of telling an artist something nice, you should do it. Otherwise it just leaves your head. And I've had that experience too, where I've met somebody I really admired the work of, especially when I was younger, and I'd be embarrassed, like, especially when I was new, like brand new to the industry, where it's like, and even now I'm like a nobody in the industry, but my point is like, I used to get this real intimidation around artists that I admired. And so I would almost like not say anything, even if I was familiar with their work, because I didn't want to weird them out. And then like that, after like some of them I became friends with, and it's like 2 years into our friendship, I'd be like, by the way, I'm like a huge fan of your work. And they're like, really? Like, it's like, how do you not know that? Like, Jim's actually one of the people I'd include in that list. Like Jim was an animator that I absolutely admired. We started hanging out on podcasts, and it was when I was a new artist in the industry. So I think I kind of played it a little cool for school. I think it was about a year into my friendship with Jim where I was like, by the way, I saw your stuff at Spike and Mike's like years ago. And it was like, it was mind blowing and hilarious. But yeah, it is weird how we hesitate. But again, it's like that verb versus noun kind of thing, right? Because if you're just like an illustrator or whatever, then why do you have to do that, right? But if you're like, maybe one of your verbs is kindness, like you want to be kind to people, then you're going to go out of your way to be like, hey, like, I want to give you a kind, like sincere compliment, not a, I don't know. So yeah, that's an interesting thing. Sorry for rambling.
Yeah. And it could also be
what we do here.
Scott, you're such an expert in your field that people that watch your video maybe don't want to bother you with,
Right.
He's the expert. He's not going to be having any time for my stupid little silly questions.
Yeah, but I guess that's the whole point, is that sometimes the people you look up to or whatever are just people, and you'd be surprised they might not be getting as much of that as you think they were, as far as bothering them and things like that. But
yeah. And honestly, you never know, like, even if they're getting like, again, you never know what's gonna make somebody's day, yeah. And like Scott, I'm glad that people like mentioned that, like had so many replies on that video too, because you have put in like 8 years of hard work on that stuff. I think you work harder than anyone I know on YouTube, and like, but I've definitely had those moments, like where like real low point in my life, after I had just gotten a book published and I felt like a failure, which happens almost every time you finish a big project, because you like have this brief, at least I'll have this brief moment of like, it's going to be a bestseller. It's going to be on the New York Times list. None of it happens. But it's like, but I got an email. It was like the lowest point after a publication, because I feel like there's this like depression period after you finish a big project. And it was my lowest point. And I opened an email and somebody told me they didn't kill themselves because of my book. And I was like, that's all the fuel I needed for the next 4 years, just from that one email. I don't think that person, I told them it meant a lot to me, but I don't know if they know like how much that meant for me, because I was at a really low point, and that's like one of the nicest things that's ever happened, but like that, go out of your way to like get out there and take action with that kind of stuff, because you never know who you're hitting. That was a strange tangent.
Yeah. No, I will have this experience. It happens occasionally where you're like, man, I am getting no feedback. No one is like, and I don't really care about the likes and whatever, like the engagement from like a social media metric situation. Like, I am in it for like the people. Like it's nice to know that you're not just like making stuff and flushing it down the toilet, that like other people are seeing it, or whatever. And I'll put something out there, and then I'll put something else out there, or I'll be doing an animation, so it takes me a little while. So I'm sharing updates along the way, and getting like no response. And then like you bump into somebody at the grocery store that you haven't seen in a couple of years or whatever, and they know everything about the project, and you didn't even know that they were like aware that you did any of that stuff. And I always just want to shake them and be like, type words on your keyboard. But anyway, yeah. But that's always really bizarre to me, that there's people that you like, you worked with 9 years ago, or that you lived next to, 15 years ago or something, that are like still aware of, what you're doing, and like intimately aware. Like I've had people make comments where I'm like, I don't even think some of my most ardent followers are like, remember that tiny little detail, or whatever. And that is always a really interesting thing. Jason, do you ever have like any of that? Are you getting, I don't know where you are in your kind of like social media journey. Are you new to YouTube, or have you been doing it for a while, or?
I've had a YouTube for a very long time, but I've only recently taken it seriously. There was a stretch in 2018 where I was live streaming every day, because I was full-time freelance, had a lot of time during the day. So I would either do like Inktober things, kind of like the Ouroboros that I was talking about, or I had a short-lived webcomic for a while called Troll and Friends, kind of a slice of life kind of comic strip. And so I would do that live, just drawing it in Illustrator through OBS. I think maybe we talked about this at Creative South. Yeah. It was just mostly the live stream was me like, wow, that's okay. I don't know why that brush is doing that now. Mess up on me, but unfortunately, a friend of mine gave me some feedback and said, "Hey, man, why don't you play some music or something in the background so we don't just have to sit there and listen to you breathe?" Right?
Yeah,
right.
A true friend will tell you that. It's his birthday today. Thanks, friend. But no, that's good. That's a good type of friends to have. That tell you honest feedback. so I did, and I would just put my iTunes on shuffle and do my thing. But of course, you're all YouTubers, right? You know that I just got copyrighted, like every single one. So, and they're like hour-long videos. I would just cut out an hour during the day, and so it's on my to-do list to take those and cut the sound out of the back and either do voiceovers over them or edit them down to be smaller kind of videos. So in 2018, this is a long way to say, in 2018, I had the starts of a channel, but mishandled it terribly. And then just recently got into pursuing it more aggressively and more mindfully, I guess.
That's awesome.
Just making myself create the content. And then Instagram, just I don't understand these kids these days with this Instagriz, with the stories and the reels and the posts. What's the difference?
I'm still angry. I just did a video about how pissed off I am. I don't know. But
I'm still mad about MySpace. That's how old I am. I'm still angry about Tom and
the people that have to hear the music that I want them to hear when they go to my page.
Yeah, and what happened to my glitter effects on my main page?
I want them to stare at my rotating GIF of my name. No, I do you guys remember Meerkat or Periscope?
Meerkat.
Meerkat, yeah.
I remember Periscope.
So
Periscope was famous for bad reasons. From what I
I was on Periscope, and I literally was just like, I was like, all right, let's do this thing. And here's what I realized once, like, I was live streaming while I was making stuff. I sing along to the music that I listen to way louder and way more than I ever thought. And like, I didn't know that I'm just sitting there like, just singing and doing stuff and whatever. And then I was like, oh, that's actually, because I'm not good. But I was, to avoid getting like copyright strikes, once like Twitter bought Periscope, and then there was other different things, I would like put headphones on, so it was worse because then you couldn't even hear the music. It was just me singing. And so I think probably all of those videos are dead and cannot be found.
Yeah.
But,
it is an interesting thing, live streaming while doing art. The one thing that I've introduced is, for one thing, I talk people's ear off. If you can't tell from this, I can just talk for like hours. It's a problem I've had. I just talk too much, which is a real advantage when you're live streaming, because it's like I don't run out of things to say. But a thing I've introduced recently is a little bit of commentary. So I think what I'm going to be doing is like playing some YouTube videos, kind of like people do on Twitch streams.
I've seen you do this recently.
Yeah, so like I'll watch something weird where it's just an interest of mine, and I'll be like, let's have this thing running while we draw, and then we'll all kind of make fun of it or talk about it or whatever. Not like drama content, but just so like because either way.
Oddly enough, it's all Ariana Grande. Just Josh is just 100%
watching, just
and
deep
just
dive.
ripping on her.
I don't even know who that is, but deep dive into into that. But I don't know. It's just like it's an interesting thing, but my thinking on it still is like I'm gonna be making that art anyway, so you should be like. I don't know. I feel like live streaming and doing. I went on a deep dive watching a bunch of flat earther debates because I was just like, I was curious. Like, do people still believe this? Like, why? Like, it's fascinating and confusing and kind of fun to watch.
But none of them have access to a plane. But
like I think that that's good advice your friend gave though, Jason. Like because the first few I did were like dead time, and I didn't get a lot of interaction because it's like just me being like, oh, I'll change this, and
So because I do remember talking about that because Josh will. Somehow, I don't know if Josh has like two brains and just one is focused on what he's doing and one can just have this running commentary about something completely unrelated. But like I also am like you, Jason, where I'm like, I'm just going to describe what's happening in my hand right now. Like, and so I find like it's really boring, just like kind of tutorial based content. But the challenge is I used to be a little bit better when it was mostly like inking. Like I can kind of ink and talk or whatever.
Yeah.
But then I got into animation, and like I'm not good at math. And so if I'm in animation and I'm trying to get like an expression to like have like a fraction of a response to another layer's movement, and like I'm in this like long equation, I'm like, it is literally impossible for me to say full sentences. Like I will just be like, I don't know, that should be, hold on. And then I'm like, this has to be the worst video to watch ever, is just Corey does math.
You know what? That's a good point though, Corey, because I feel like editing when I think about it, it's like, yeah, like video editing, you can't do a live stream while editing. At least I couldn't do a live stream while video editing or like editing music. It's like, it's too much of a tempo kind of thing, Right. I just couldn't imagine that. Yeah, because it would just be incoherent babbling.
Well, and I've noticed this is when I'm animating. I wonder if Jim does this. I'm trying to get the timing down because I don't have like an internal rhythm, and so I'm trying to get the timing down by like physically acting out what I want to happen. And so I'll sit there and be like, nope, I need to move that a keyframe over. But okay, hold on, I gotta, and I'm like, so it's just like, okay, best thing, Jason, I'll have to send you this link. Josh and one of his buddies and I were on this show, and we usually are working on stuff. You can see Scott like working on stuff. I'm gonna pull something up here in a minute, but I was working on something where I had an animation of my eye. My eye was part of it. So I had this like big machine that was kind of moving around and had like all these moving parts, but several of the kind of lenses that were moving, I was planning on having my eye. So I was just like recording, my eye doing all of this weird stuff, not realizing that I'm being fairly distracting to the like podcast that's happening. And I just like the conversation just ground to a halt. And then he goes, "What is Corey doing right now?" And I was like, "Oh, sorry guys, I forgot."
Because I think while we were talking, I'm trying to remember this, but I think while we were talking, you like got it up close, and you're like,
"Yeah," because I wanted to get like the light.
And we're like, what is going on?
No, so I lit it from the side because I wanted to have like the shadow of my cornea, so that because I was gonna do like a levels adjustment, so I was gonna get that like posterized effect. Yeah, so I had to get really like awkwardly close. Anyway, what are we talking about right now?
We need to talk more about Jason. I feel like
yeah. Let's talk about don't drink the paint water, or do drink the paint water.
Do drink the paint water. Well, first, I'd like to shout out to this wide angle lens that makes it look like I just have all my crap crammed into one corner. I promise that's a full wall. Anyway. You get to see the boom up above me for my rim lighting. Huh? You guys are comic guys?
Nice.
So yeah, drink the paint water. Anybody who's ever painted anything has probably accidentally picked up, at least got it close to your mouth, like your paint water, or worse, like your brush in your whiskey, right, or your coffee. So that's where that came from. I was just looking for a loose and fun brand, something that's not my name because it's so intimidating, so hard to spell and remember. But yeah, it's again, that is a recent initiative. Also, I had jasonbrown.com since like 2002 or something, and then with the name change, I was talking before we got on live here. I got married in 2020, and my wife and I, instead of like hyphenating our names or whatever, we just like smashed them together. Like, oh yeah, you got your syllable and my syllable. I got your syllable. Anyway, that's how Reese's peanut butter cups were made. So I no longer have
You're showing your age.
My maiden name. Yes. What was I talking about? Okay, but that was always just like a portfolio site. So I wanted this one to be more active. So every time I make a video on YouTube, I post it to my blog, just so that I own that content. and I can direct people to one spot. They don't have to try to remember my socials or anything like that. I'm trying to build my email list, but I'm terrible at it. So that's on a to-do for sure. But I think it's really important to own your list just in case a billionaire buys your favorite social thing and then flies it to Mars. But yeah, so that's basically, ever since I had that professional coaching in the fall, it moved me from a hobbyist to being more serious about my career. Just because I'm 49 years old, I'm no spring chicken, and if something happened to my big, comfy, cushy day job, I'd kind of be in the weeds, So I want to have a property that's all mine and build the runway for a successful creative career, just doing whatever I want. I graduated college in '98. I was born at the very young age of 0. I graduated college in '98 and with a degree in graphic design. And I've been a graphic designer that whole time, just kind of doing illustration on the side. I did some copywriting and some proofreading a few years ago just to mix things up a little bit. And now I'm actually lucky enough to do a lot of illustration for my day job. So that's pretty fun. But that's kind of my many decades of doing a lot of design related things and art.
I'll tell you just a funny story about Drink the Paint Water. I have all of those stickers from Creative South. And so I brought them, I teach college. And so I brought them to work and I was showing my students, and your stickers get like a visceral reaction. Like everybody's like, they'll see like Doc Reed and they're like, oh, cool. And they're like talking about like how he's making it and the choices that he's making. And then I like pull out, they're kind of a little bit Garbage Pail Kids, you know what I mean? And then the idea of drinking the paint water. So like the visuals and the words, every time I've shown that to somebody at work, they're like, oh no, and it's like, so it's like that fun grossed out, it's awesome. And so you've really like nailed like the aesthetic with that name. It's been really fun to just watch them. This is something that I should have told you. I'm glad you're on the show, so that I'm telling you now, given the conversation we had earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that we're like saying like never compliment artists, and yet like Corey's like, oh, by the way, I never.
This has happened 12 times over the last couple of weeks, and I never mentioned it for whatever reason. But no, it's been really fun, and so I love that kind of the fun-loving and entertaining kind of way that you're doing your kind of art life. That it is landing kind of in that way. And so it's, awesome. If you're not getting that response, you're definitely on the right track and it's hitting the way that I hope you want to. Yeah.
I gave one to somebody who was working the convention at Crop, not one of the attendees, but one of the facility people. And just because I was handing it out and she was there and she's like, oh, that is so true. I took my daughter to a ceramics painting thing, and she kept trying to drink the paint water. And I'm like, well, you should let her drink it. Yeah. And it's also like sort of like the dark angle too is that it's a little bit of play on Drink the Kool-Aid.
Right.
So you drink the paint water. Come watch these stupid videos, dude. Yeah.
Okay,
that's awesome. And by the way, also it does initiate any memory of anyone who was in art school, because it's like I've definitely had moments. I had a time where I sipped terpenoid. Like I was reaching for my coffee and it was like the bucket with the coil, and I went like the second it. But yeah, so
I was in high school in art class, and there was this kid, and we. I don't know why. Maybe our school is poor or something. We didn't have paint cups. Like we didn't have even like disposable cups. So everybody would just bring like empty cans of soda that they finished at lunch or whatever. And so anyway, so we were just like, messing around doing stuff, and somebody like, because we're dumb teenagers, and so we're like wasting art supplies because we didn't pay for them. Like drop a piece of like chalk or whatever. So we had mixed just like whatever we could in this empty can of soda. So there was paint, there was whatever else. And this guy was like, hey, how much did you pay me to drink that? And I was like, dude, I'll give you, I got a couple bucks. I'll give you a couple bucks. You know, it was the 90s. So that was more than it is now. And then, so anyway, so several people kind of pitched in, and this kid drank an entire can of whatever was in it.
That's our old generation's version of a TikTok challenge for anyone watching.
Right. This is this would be the equivalent of the Tide Pod challenge. And so I got pulled out of class several periods later by like campus security or whatever. And this guy was like,
You just killed somebody, Corey.
Yeah, he was like, hey.
And Corey's finally come out, and now we can drop the charade of Artcasters. Yes, Corey, this was all a trap.
Yes,
like Columbo, like a Columbo episode to get you to confess to the murder of this child.
300+ long con. So, but the guy
got that on tape. All right.
Yeah, the guy was like, "Hey, did you force somebody to drink paint water?" And I was like, "No, I didn't." Well, he says that you did, and I was like, "I gave him $2." And he was like, well, you know, he's like going to the hospital. I'm like, yeah, I'd imagine he would. There was a lot of crap in that, you know. and then, well, don't you? I mean, like you made him drink. I was like, I didn't make him do anything. I think he did it for like $8.25. Like that was not. No one forced him. This is not a bullying situation. He literally said, "How much would you pay me to drink this?" And we came up with $8. Like. This is not like he's like, well, don't you feel bad? I'm like, no, I feel like that guy is an idiot. Like he was like, but he couldn't get me on anything because I didn't actually do anything. I'm like, so are you trying to get me in trouble for another person choosing to make a bad decision and then getting hurt? And I was near them. And he's like, well, I mean, like, you know, he didn't have it. Anyway. I was
Corey,
such a jerk back then.
This is why Jason reached out, like went to lunch with you. I don't know if you realize he branded himself that because who do you think that child was, Corey?
It was me.
That's right. There were damages.
This is the end of this long con. I don't know what that dude's. Yeah, I don't know what that dude's doing now.
But I think that's a good sign that it's good branding because I think, like Scott, do you have a story of almost drinking paint water?
Oh, I think everyone did.
Yeah.
Or like somebody's cigarette thing, ashes or something like that. Yeah.
Okay, Jim has a question for you, Jason. So, how does Jason feel about being the newest member of the Artcaster family, and is it too soon to ask him to borrow money?
Well, I was thanks for the question, Jim. First time caller, long time listener. I was very honored to be part of the magic here. And if you want to make some money, I know where you can get $8.
Yeah, right. I'm not going to adjust for inflation, but I will still give you $8 if on camera you drink. No cuts.
Like 3 hours worth of minimum wage labor back then.
Right. Yeah. Oh yeah. Back in the day. I don't know, man. Anyway. But yeah, no, I agree. Like the idea of like linking it to something that is like very a common experience and a very memorable experience. It's a genius name.
Yeah, and it does set up an expectation because it's like it's gonna get a little rowdy, but silly, which I think is kind of awesome. It sets the tone. So like when you say something like, oh, okay, I'm gonna do this like velvet Elvis painting, it like that to me sounds like something that would be like drink the paint water, not in a negative way. It just sounds. It's playful, and I think that's cool. That's rad. And play is super important because that's again like that verb stuff, right? Like
right. Yeah, absolutely.
So, out of curiosity, is that like a big incentive, like in the content that you're generating? Is like kind of a big element of it is play, like just kind of playing?
It's absolutely. It's 100% play. It's just. Hey, here's an idea I wanted to do. One of the first projects I did for the new channel was wood burning of Bigfoot, and then I painted it. And I think I've wood burned once in my life, like 10 years ago. So I was like, all right, let's do this. For the camera, why not? And it worked out okay. I only burned myself once. Not too bad. In the future, in my mind, this is going to work. I want to get like either a CNC machine or a laser etcher,
Uh-huh.
and then make art on Procreate, and then send it to that printer, and then use that as like a litho plate or a woodblock to pull actual physical prints.
Oh, that would be
Yeah.
cool.
It's gotta
That's
work,
cool.
right? You know,
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't see why that wouldn't. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, depending on how deep the machine cuts. But so that, watch for that. Stay tuned. You'll see that.
If you figure that out, I'll have to pick your brain, because that sounds really cool. Because a lot of the stuff that I've been doing lately is just pure black and white, and so it would translate to something like that really well.
Wouldn't that be cool? Because you could do the separations just right in Photoshop even,
right,
and then send them off there and make the different plates.
I just bought
a couple $100.
Where is that? I just bought some traditional Japanese woodcut or woodblock prints, and apparently I've lost them.
Yeah, those were taken by the paint water kid, Corey.
Right.
In punishment.
I feel like everybody's gonna think I'm a bully, but honestly,
that's
kid
a fair
was
point.
That kid was a jerk. Like he.
If I were to say, yeah, sorry.
No, he took needle nose pliers, and while the football team was at an away game, and so we parked our car in the school parking lot, and then got on the bus, and then we went out. He had pulled the stem of all of our tires out, which basically like ruins the tire. Anyway, that was hundreds of dollars of damage to several vehicles, and so I feel like getting him to go to the hospital drinking paint water was okay.
That's good context there. Now I don't feel so bad for that kid.
He's the same guy that was like, I was like, why did you shave your 18-inch green mohawk off? And he's like, it's really easy for the cops to find you when you're the only guy in town with a 2-foot-long green mohawk. And I was like, yeah, that's a good point. Also, you have to be doing illegal things for the cops to want to find you. But yeah, I get your point. Anyway.
Especially in a tiny town, yeah.
See, now I'm like imagining this, like Back to the Future 2, the character Flea plays, where he's like, come on, McFly. Like I'm picturing that guy,
Picture him, but like a straight edge vegan, really high and mighty on his high horse. You know what I mean? And then, yeah.
That kind of describes a lot of people that I would want to drink paint water. And not ironically.
Right. No, I don't mind if you're vegan, I don't care, right? Whatever. But in the 90s, if you were vegan, it was like a religion that you decided to shove down everyone's throat. And as a teenager, my kind of rebellious sense of like individuality kind of bristled at people trying to make me feel bad for eating a burger. And so I had like a war on vegans. It was entertaining.
So I'm curious. So Jason, like, what do you feel kind of awakened this like kind of verb rather than noun thing? And then do you feel like kind of prior to hearing that like talk or whatever about verbs versus nouns, do you feel like you've been kind of too much of a noun in the past, and this is kind of an attempt, like a move to be more of a verb? Or I'm just kind of curious, like what the inspiration is. It does sound like, a lot of it is kind of trying to set up your own property and stuff, but do you want to get into a little bit of like what kind of has led to that, or would that be retreading too much territory?
Well, sure. I think a lot of it kind of, I hate to keep going back to it, but it culminates with the professional training that I had. I spent 12 weeks just really dissecting goals and habits and things like that.
Yeah.
And just to be active, to not rest on your laurels. And like I mentioned, I have a background also in copywriting and editing, so the active voice versus passive voice speaks to me too. So it's not like the paint was drank. It's like I drank the paint. That I did a thing, not something happened to the thing. I did the thing. And so it's just time to do the thing. And so when I was flying, it's actually that the bit about being a verb is at the very tail end of that podcast, of the Creative Pep Talk episode 406. It's just kind of his call to adventure. The rest of the whole thing was about how you don't need 1 million followers on social and everything. but it was just kind of like a little footnote, and it just really resonated with me. I actually had to rewind it and listen to it again. His whole point was just, think about evolving, think about action, think about you say you want to be a risk grandmaster. Where can you go to do that? What are the steps, the specific steps you have to take to become this risk grandmaster? And just think of your life or your career or anything. It doesn't even have to be your creative career. What do you want to emulate? What are the steps to get there? Go out and do them.
Yeah, that's amazing. I had a friend who was a really good like problem solver when I was early in like comics, like trying to get my first like comic published. And he always used to like, if I was freaking out about something, because it is frustrating when you're trying to kind of get something done as an artist, especially early. And he would always like pause while I'd talk to him, and he'd be like, "Well, what do you want? And then what are you trying to do to get there?" And that would always reorient it in like a more action oriented mindset, because it's like, yeah, why am I upset? Like, what do I want, and what am I going to do to get there? And I think that's a much more, I don't know, I love that approach of like the verb oriented approach to things. And I also think like it kind of ties into that waiting for permission thing that I think a lot of artists do, unnecessarily, like as if you need 1 million followers to do the thing you want in art, right?
Right.
And quite often, like I think in commercial art, sometimes you'll catch yourself like working on commercial work and being like, when I get the time, I'll work on this other stuff, and the can get proverbially kicked down the road, and it's like, wait, what client are we waiting for? I'll say we, not just you, but are we waiting for to do these cool things we want to do? Like that magic client may never happen, or maybe the client does happen and it's just not that great. But like right now you can take actions towards that kind of thing. So that's a really cool, I don't know, that's a cool message. It's inspiring.
Yeah, thanks.
I wonder if there's a little bit of abdication that kind of goes on in some of that. Like if I make something for a client and it's bad, I can always just say, well, it was the client's idea or whatever.
Yeah.
But like if I make something on my own, like it's full on what I decided to do. No one else is involved, and I own it. And I think younger people tend to be a little bit scared of that level of accountability and responsibility.
True.
To be like, of everything that you could have done, this is what you chose to do. That is, I've noticed, because I'm around 20-year-olds a lot. I've noticed they're kind of scared when I say, pick something and impress me with it. That's the assignment. And they're like, well, what do you want me to do? I'm like, whatever you want to do, it should take you 2 weeks. And they're like, oh, they like freak out about it for a while. And it's kind of an interesting thing, because people our age would be like, fantastic. I've got dedicated time to do whatever I want. This is amazing. Because like, I don't care what other people think at this point. Yeah.
Oh, it's so funny how what in college feels like a rush. Yeah. Like 2 weeks.
Right,
You're like, oh my gosh, this illustration's due in 2 weeks. And you're like, you get 2 weeks on a single image? That's amazing. Like, that's amazing.
Yeah. Jason, I found these. So these are original Japanese woodblock prints from kind of World War II era. Some of them are kind of reproductions during World War II of more ancient ones, but I bought 3 of these. They're really cool.
Yeah,
of course.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's fun.
Thomas Adams in chat said he worked with laser for 5 years, and your idea should work, but it might take a while to get the correct settings. So you can probably, I wonder if you can set the depth. I've never worked with one of those before. So
yeah, or even just like how rough it is, or
and
I'm sure like more expensive ones work better.
Yeah,
but I'll get the cheapest one and just.
I love that idea though of like playing more on stream. I feel like that might resonate with somebody on our show that might be doing something
soonish.
It's all about
soonish. That might be revealed at the end of this video. Keep watching, guys. Hit like. What are you doing?
It's all about your verb. I mean, if my verb was get rich,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be messing around on the camera, but it's not. It's so it all different strokes for different folks, right?
Yeah, agreed. And honestly, if your verb is get rich, just stop doing art, guys. Like, I mean, there's some wealthy artists, but go into like corporate law,
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot easier stuff to get rich on that doesn't destroy your back and shoulders and arms. And
you just have to sell your soul.
Right.
Yeah. I knew a guy, boy, that's probably 15 years ago now, but who built his own CNC machine. And so he had like a little computer, and there's tutorials that he followed online, and he was able to like build a CNC machine, and it's really just like a drill bit that moves on an X and Y axis. And so, I don't know if that's something that you'd be interested in doing, but to me, I was like, whoa, this is really fascinating. But I mean, his was like, we were doing big blocks of EPS styrofoam. And so it was like I think it was like a 6 foot by 8 foot, like bed. Anyway, we just had it in this warehouse, and it was like, hey, could you make a thing? And so he got this like 3D scanner, and he would sculpt something out of clay just a couple inches tall, and then put it on his scanner, and then print it, I guess you would call it, in EPS styrofoam, like 8 feet tall. I'm like, this is the coolest thing, because then you just take like a hot knife and a small chainsaw to like do the rest of it. And then he would just tag it in like polyurea, like truck bed liner. And he has this like giant reproduction of his like 6-inch tall sculpture that he did. Anyway, it was a cool process that he did. It was pretty fun.
So Jason, I got a question about the mediums that you use, right? It sounds like you use a lot of like mixed media in your work, and a lot of it is that kind of like, even now it sounds like you're taking this approach of like that verb of like entertaining with the mediums. So how are you kind of approaching that? Because Corey was talking about like subjects, like how are you picking like your I think he used a very articulate Corey Kerr word of triaging, right? So like in the emergency room of your mediums, like how do you kind of triage that? Like how do you pick which patient goes first?
I'm not sure why the wood burning went first. I think it all just hinges on my whims. Right?
Yeah. So
I had all these wooden plaques that you get at Michael's or wherever, and I thought, okay, I've painted on some. We were talking about fan art earlier. Oh, here I'm on the rabbit trail again. We were talking about fan art earlier, and one of the only fan arts I've ever made, because I feel the same way Corey does. Like,
me too.
I hate to do it. Was Jack Torrance from The Shining. And it's just gnarly. It's a good looking little plaque. It's back there somewhere, back in my corner of stuff. And so I had these plaques lying around. I was like, okay, I should try to wood burn on that. And the black velvet, I have no idea where that whim came through, but I think I'm done with that for now. I think that that episode, I did 4 paintings. Actually, 2 drawings and 2 paintings. One with dry pastels, which was horrible. So if you want to see an artist fail at using a medium, check out my evil clown with dry pastels. Used oil pastels, which worked out better. And then the last 2 have been acrylic paint.
That's awesome.
But I do, a lot of that is black ink, India ink, acrylic paints. Like I said, I really love golden acrylic. There's Jack Torrance. So I did that as a big painting for a friend of mine, and I actually kind of did a decoupage in the back. So I printed out a whole bunch of pages of All Work No Play Makes Jack a Dull Boy, and just kind of slathered it all over in the background of that Shining painting, and then painted over the top of it. But then I gifted that to a friend, so she's got the original of that. But then I took a scan of it and printed it out on photo paper and glued it down to one of those little wooden plaques that I was talking about, and shellacked the hell out of it and burned it with a lighter and stuff like that just to make it look gnarly. It's about just having fun.
Yeah.
Oh, and that Bill Murray, that's some fan art there too.
I think that's so important, right? To like, because I do feel like one of the cool things about like my son is like he just draws. Like he'll just get in the mood and just starts drawing, you know. And I don't know when that gets killed, you know. And it's like my goal as a parent is to like not kill that. Like let him, you know, pursue and explore and give him the tools to do it, you know. But it's like, I think that artists, I think at least I find myself like even on long projects where I'm working on like a graphic novel or something, and I have to work in the same consistent style for a long period of time, where then when I'm like tasked with like exploring a little bit, it's like a little intimidating, you know? So I almost am curious, do you think part of it's also like, are you pretty fearless with your art, or do you think some of it's like leaning into, you're like, I'm kind of nervous about trying this, so I'm going to do it? Like,
no, I'm entirely fearless about it. And
nice.
And not at all married to any piece of art. I don't think anything I've ever made where I was like, oh, I can't get rid of this. My baby.
Yeah.
No, it's just boom. If someone's gonna love it, if someone likes a piece of my art, chances are I'm just gonna give it to them.
Yeah.
I mean, unless I'm at a show and I have a cover overhead and stuff like that. But it's just I got my enjoyment out of making it. Like,
I love it.
The act of creation really thrills me. And so the actual painting or whatever is just it's a byproduct of the experience I had.
I love that. That's a really healthy way to approach it.
Thanks. But it's because I'm not trying to make a living off of it. You know,
Right.
I think that's where the disconnect comes from. I don't feel that pressure. I can just do whatever I want, like your son, because I'm not trying to monetize it. I mean, you know, prints of this stuff is available. That one right there, that Please Don't Leave Me Here. Here's a little side story again. I was at the Stoughton Opera House, which is one of those beautiful old opera houses in rural Wisconsin, seeing the Dina and the Vagabonds, really cool kind of jazz band. And the thought just occurred to me, like, please don't leave me here. And I don't know if it was like a ghost or just what, because it had apropos of nothing. Just, I was looking at the piano on stage and I heard, please don't leave me here. And so I went home and painted that. So that was pretty wild.
That's
I
awesome.
love that.
Yeah, and so that's just a board, and then I put some drywall, like some gypsum drywall slather on there, inked it black, and then painted the little ghost. I just hand wrote that in there. And, that's a friend of mine owns that.
That's cool.
I think that's such a cool approach too, and I feel like it's funny. There is something about being in like an old building and like just this strange like ghosts kind of thing that happens. My friend Chris Cawagua, who's been on the show, we did a convention. I ended up getting this like stupidly nice hotel room because it was like the cheapest one, but it was at this like old ancient hotel, and the hotel had all these framed pictures that were like black and white of like the famous guests in the past. And you could tell it's like that old Hollywood vibe where it's like, it used to be, this place was like the place to be. And then it just magically transformed away from that. But it's still got like, it's haunted by like all these old, like very shining type stuff.
Right.
And so we actually, you know, we're both like designers and illustrators. So we have that kind of mind that's like, okay, we are walking around and inventing ghost stories about this place. Like so it's funny. A lot of people are like, oh, we're doing drink and draws. We're doing socialization. And I'm like hanging out with my buddy, walking around a hotel, and just, we're like, who do you think this old lady was? Like, do you think she was like the person who's like haunting the chef, you know? So that's amazing.
I wonder if I stayed there, because that reminds me of a hotel that I stayed at. Is it attached to like? Is there a diner like close to it, like attached to it? Yeah.
It's just like there, it's got that vibe, you know, where you like, I want to write like. So I totally understand that experience, Jason, where it's like going there makes me want to like write stories about like seances and ghosts and stuff, because it's like, I mean, there is something. I love that. I love that you're getting those inclinations, and then getting to a point as a creative to be there where you can do that, follow those inclinations is a real, that's a real gift. That's cool.
Well, we're almost exactly at an hour and a half. So should we call it?
Yeah, let's wind it down.
Yeah.
Let's do it. So, Jason, why don't you? I know you're doing it to entertain yourself, but you also have got stuff for sale, and it's fun to entertain yourself whether people watch. So, what's the number one thing that you want people to do after watching this interview?
Yeah, you should go to drinkthepaintwater.com and get on my mailing list. Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
But I messed up earlier when you were all talking about mugs. This artwork is available on a mug at drinkthepaintwater.com in 2 different sizes. But yeah, go there, check out my art, check out my stupid videos, get on that mailing list. There's some freebies. I don't email nearly as often as I should, so it's not like I'm going to cram your inbox full of beer hairs or anything like that.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And smash that like button, like the smash button.
Yes,
that's right.
Like the smash button.
That's right. Jim said, "Nice to virtually meet you, Jason. Great show." Yeah. I love the approach to art. I think it's really inspiring. And also it sounds like I have not watched a ton of your YouTubes yet, but you've sold me on it like during this. Cause I'm like, I just love, I think that's one of the great things about art school is like having to try like different stuff, you know? And I think we can get away from that sometimes as artists. And so I think leaning into that and like doing all sorts of mediums and like picking up dry pastels, even allowing yourself to like fail at it and be like, okay, well, let's try oil pastels. I think that's just really exciting and fun and sounds inspiring. So you've definitely got me on the hook now too. You guys, should check that out.
Every Sunday I do kind of a self-accountability vlog, I guess. Nice. So that might not be as interesting. It's just me talking about the little steps that I made to further my artistic career through the week. So if you see any of those, you're not interested in that, don't watch them. But
these guys used to do a show like that too.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Oh, did you?
I think,
okay,
yeah. Anybody following Corey or me would be way into that.
Yeah. We had 286 episodes of 48-hour art check, where we literally just talked about what we did for the last 2 days and what we're planning on doing for the next 2 days. So
I think it's important to keep yourself on track. I had last year, or I guess like in 2020, maybe I did 100 days of daily wins. So on my YouTube, so there's a bunch of those too. But it would be like daily wins with Jason, day 1, day 2, day 3. But because of the term Jason Day, I was getting a lot of golf traffic because he's a really famous golfer, I guess.
Yeah.
And my wife's cousin flew me into that. I had no idea, but yeah, those got pretty good traffic, but not of my own making.
That's so funny though. Like, so do you now have like a strange contingent of like golfing fans that buy your art? They're like,
I doubt it. They probably looked at it and went, "Wow, he let himself go."
I just think it would be funny if you suddenly have just like this secret subsect of like golf loving art followers.
Well, yeah, switch doing some golf paintings and then maybe get tracks with them.
They could all secretly be loving me and just not speaking out,
right? Yeah,
yeah. I mean, if they're fans of golf, like they've got to be fans of watching paint dry. You know what I mean?
Drink the bunker water or whatever. Yeah.
That's awesome.
I can't think of a more boring sport than golf, except for seniors golf. But so on that note. But it's televised and they've got commentators. So, they're doing something. Josh, where can we find your stuff?
You can find me at joshuakemble.com, Joshua Kemble streaming on YouTube. And you can also find me on apparently Christopher Runtsman's Instagram, where he did a comic of the Kremlin, which is the joke that I call the followers of my vlog. On his Instagram. So I want to shout out Christopher Runtsman because he has like this whole once the Kremlin have taken over the world, like what that looks like. They have like a Kremlin museum, and it's all a riff on a joke that came out of TCAF, misspelling my name as Kremble instead of Kemble for a panel. So thank you, Christopher Runtsman, for doing that. And yeah, get my books, all that fun stuff. But more importantly, follow Drink the Paint Water on YouTube, because inspiring stuff. And like, honestly, I can see why you guys all gelled at Creative South, because I'm like, oh, you're just like you're one of the guys. Like I can tell. So you're very easy to talk to and fun to talk to and inspiring. So yeah,
likewise.
awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you can find my stuff after you go to drinkthepaintwater.com and sign up for the email newsletter. You should sign up for my newsletter, which you can do at coreycrew.com/email. And I've also got some new stuff. I experimented a little bit with color on this one. So if you've ever been interested in my phrase, go make stuff or do things robots can't, both of those kind of show up in this one. And it shows up as mugs and laptop case and t-shirts and other types of things. And so get on my email newsletter to make sure that you don't miss out on that stuff. And if you want to watch me whining about my regrets of ever opening an Instagram app, you can watch my most recent video.
It's a good one.
Yeah,
I'll watch it.
It's great. Yeah.
And I've been watching Jason's videos too. And
they're fun.
So,
they're pretty fun. Scott, where can we find your stuff, and how do we keep track of this whole Artcasters thing?
So you can find my videos on my YouTube channel. Tons of videos on just making art, making a living out of doing art, and specifically kind of comics. Like my Making Comics 101 series on YouTube. And I also have digital products for making comics on my website at circworks.com, as well as my comic book, Young and the Dead. So Young and the Dead. It's a kids versus zombie adventure story. Just think Goonies meets Night of the Living Dead. So that's my stuff. Oh, yeah. Again, Free Comic Book Day is Saturday, May 6th. And wherever you live in the world, if you're a comic book fan, go out to your local comic book store and support them. If you happen to be in Arizona, come out and see me at Surprise Comics on Free Comic Book Day. I will be there signing comics and doing sketches and all kinds of stuff. And as Corey mentioned, this show, the Artcasters, we do this show every single week. It kind of rotates around. It kind of bounces back and forth between Josh's channel and Corey's channel. We have a different guest every week, different topic. Typically it's Thursdays, but it could change. You never know. So if you want to know exactly what day we're going to be on, who the guest is going to be, whose channel is going to be on, all that stuff, join our mailing list. There's a link in the description of this video. We don't spam you or anything. All we do is about 30 minutes, at least 30 minutes before we go live, we'll put that out so you know where to find us. So, because YouTube doesn't always notify people. And
if you're in Scott's area, make sure it's Surprise Comics. We don't want to reignite the epic comic feud between, comic stores in Arizona. Yeah, because I mean that war got ugly. That's all I have to say. And make sure you guys have liked this video.
You notice that Josh never pushes super chats when it's on my channel?
Give super chat.
We'll catch you guys next week.
Give super chat.